Now You Know BC is brought to you by Return It. Don't trash your empty beverage containers. Return them for the deposit refund.
Welcome to Now You Know BC. I'm Bob Kronbauer, also known as BC Bob, and on this show, I introduce you to interesting people, places to go, things to see, things that have happened in our past. You'll hear our collective stories. This week, I'm talking about things that have fallen out of the sky here. Planes, fake UFOs, pamphlets, meteorites, acorns, and even a wayward nuclear bomb from the United States that's still missing. Or is it? Did you know that there's a 10,000-pound nuclear bomb that was lost by the US military in BC that's never been found? It's true. It happened in 1950 when a military plane was flying over northern BC and caught fire. It was actually the first of many nuclear bombs that they lost. Bomber 075 was on its way to Texas from Alaska with a Mark V nuclear bomb on board. But the plane caught fire and the crew ended up having to evacuate. Before they evacuated, they dumped the nuclear bomb into the Inside Passage, the Pacific Ocean, in British Columbia. The bomb was never found, and the plane was only found 4 years later, deep in the mountains. And the wreck is still up there. It's protected by the BC Heritage Act, and it's only accessible by helicopter because it is way out there. Dirk Scepter wrote this very good book about it, which you can find everywhere. It came out in 2012. Now, another plane that was lost in BC and was eventually found crashed out in the Fraser Valley, and it resulted in the death of 62 people, including 5 pro football players who had just played in an all-star game at Empire Stadium in Vancouver. Their remains are still up there on Mount Slessy, as are most of the scattered remnants of the downed plane. It was December of 1956 when a cross-Canada flight from Vancouver to Toronto took off from YVR Airport. Trans-Canada Airlines Flight 8109's first stop was supposed to be Calgary. Not long after they took off, one of the plane's engines caught fire when they were over Manning Park, near Hope. So the pilots asked air traffic control if they could turn around and go back to Vancouver. They got approval to do that, but instead of turning left and doing a loop like they were supposed to do, they turned right, crashing right into Mount Slessy. All 62 people on board died, and since it was winter, they didn't find the remains of the crash until the following May, 5 months later. The remains of the passengers are buried up on the mountain where the debris field is, and a cairn there honors those who lost their lives. The area was designated as an official heritage site by the BC government back in 1995, and a trail has been established that you can hike to go and visit it. It takes about 6 hours both ways. Now you know. Each week I show you a different BC artifact. Sometimes it's stuff that I can bring into the studio or go to. This one is out in Ontario, so all I've got is the story, and it is quite the story. So, this is a piece of the largest meteorite to ever touch down in Canada, which landed on a lake in BC back in the year 2000. Maybe we could use Conan O'Brien's "In the Year the Tooth," that thing in here. Arv, can you put that in? In the year 2000. In the year 2000, a massive fireball was spotted in the Yukon and in northwestern BC, which ended up being what is now called the Tagish Lake meteorite. Maybe it's Tagish Lake. I don't know how to pronounce it because it landed on Tagish Lake. That's why they named it that. Thankfully, it was in January and the lake was frozen at the time, so they were able to collect more than 500 individual pieces of the thing. And this is one of them that ended up being studied by scientists. If you've ever seen the alien movie Prometheus, where they show a theory about how life may have developed on Earth and how humans ultimately came to be, that's what they did with this piece of rock. That is what they believe that they uncovered. And by they, I mean researchers at the Royal Ontario Museum and McMaster University. They found that this space rock was not only rich in sodium, but it also had a very high pH, whatever that means, but it would have made for the perfect conditions for amino acids to form and very well could have triggered the development of microbial life as we know it on this planet. But it wasn't triggered by this meteorite, no. This one landed in the year 2000. The triggering likely happened thanks to another meteorite that landed here a long time ago and came from a galaxy far, far away. A piece of the Tagish meteorite is on display at the Royal Ontario Museum, if you're ever out that way, and this is me officially petitioning the Royal BC Museum to put a chunk of this thing on display. Let's do it. Let's tell more British Columbians this story. We're gonna go to break, but stick around because we've got horticulturalist Chris Chung with us next. She's gonna show us something incredibly stinky that fell from the sky. Welcome back to Now You Know BC, where we're talking all about things that fall from the sky. My guest today is Vancouver's own Chris Chung, a horticulture educator and author. She trained at the UBC Botanical Garden and later worked as the instructor of their training program. Chris runs a business called Fluent Garden, where she helps landscape pros and backyard gardeners focus on installing edible, ornamental landscapes. In layman's terms, she helps people make gardens that look really good and you can also eat them. Thanks for joining me, Chris.
Thanks for having me.
You got my attention first with this really stinky thing that you did a video about on TikTok.
Yeah.
And you brought it with you.
I did.
Tell us, what is this thing?
So it's sealed up because it does smell. It's very pungent. If you've walked through the streets in Chinatown, in Vancouver, you may have seen ginkgo trees. They're beautiful. They're colorful, bright yellow, but they also drop the stinky seeds. I don't know if you want to open them.
I absolutely want to smell it. Yeah. So they drop the stinky seeds.
Yeah, but I have to caution you, don't touch them. The smell comes from something called butyric acid, which is makes your skin feel funny.
And it stinks?
And it stinks.
Is it going to hurt my sinuses?
I don't know, may clear some sinuses.
Oh, it's actually... I'm going to say this, it sort of smells like food, but it also smells disgusting.
Yeah, so the butyric acid, I think you find that in dairy products.
Okay.
So it's kind of like rotten milk smell.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like cheese.
Stinky cheese.
Stinky cheese, rotten cheese.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay, so you found these in Chinatown.
Yeah.
And what do you do with these?
So in Asian cuisines, people put them in desserts, like not the stinky stuff. So you have to go through this process of cleaning the outside of the seed, like the smelly stuff. And once that's cleaned, you can crack the inside and then I think you boil them, put them in desserts and soups. A prized delicacy.
I had no idea because what I got out of it is that you
step away from them.
No, you turn them into trees.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
And these are for you. You can grow some trees.
No.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's so cool. So you propagate these.
I've never tried myself.
You haven't tried yourself?
No.
Okay.
No.
But you can turn this into a ginkgo tree.
You can. But you can't really tell if it's going to be a male or a female, and that's the catch. The trees are called dioecious. There's a male tree, there's a female tree, but cities and homeowners, they choose to grow the male trees because the fruit is oftentimes undesirable because of the smell. But they're beautiful street trees, so that's why you see people grow them in their gardens. They do get large, but I don't know, they're nice.
I like the leaves.
Yes.
A lot.
Yeah.
Chestnuts.
Yeah.
Can we eat the chestnuts that we find on the ground? You brought a chestnut as well.
So I did. So this is what we're talking about. And these are not like the Christmas roast them on a open fire kind of thing. These are called horse chestnuts. So it's kind of a misnomer because they're not true chestnuts. They're in a completely different family. They're used as street trees because they are large and they have beautiful flowers. So sometimes you see big trusses of white flowers. Sometimes they come in red. That's why they're grown. Not for that, because you can't eat them. They're mildly toxic or toxic to people. So don't eat these ones.
Oh, okay.
The ones like the sweet chestnuts that people eat, turn them into, like the purees and desserts. That's a completely different species.
Huh.
Yeah.
What about cannabis? Are people growing cannabis in the gardens that you're making?
Not so much. I think people just, I don't know, if they have some seeds, they'll grow it for fun or just for themselves and then they harvest it. But I find with Vancouver it's kind of tricky because sometimes it's a bit too cool to start, it's too wet. They like hotter, drier conditions, to get the nice parts to harvest.
Yeah.
But they are really lovely and very, very lush.
And fragrant.
Yes.
Yeah. Huh. Okay, so you have a book. Tell us about your book.
I do. So it's called The Layered Edible Garden. There we have it, Layered Edible Garden. What I did here was just break down, how to approach gardening, whether you are growing food or just things that are pretty. But I've broken it down in a way where it's kind of like choose your own adventure, because around Vancouver there are a lot of conifers, and sometimes that casts a lot of shade. What can you do? And people sometimes feel stuck, like, oh, I can't grow fruit, I can't grow any food because it's too dark, it's too wet. But with this approach, I'm sort of outlining, well, there are tall things, but there are short things. Let's think about these vertical tiers that you can have edible food plants occupy. So it kind of helps build this framework. I'm like, oh, there's an empty spot there. Maybe I can grow gooseberries or currants, which actually don't need a lot of full sun. Like, the goal here was to encourage people to try different plants. Because with the climate kind of shifting and what we're seeing in the garden kind of changing, you get to try different things, and I've got a whole bunch of weird stuff. I love growing the weird things, so there's some neat ideas in here, and it works in Vancouver.
Perfect. Okay, cool. Thanks for joining us. You can find this book where?
You can find it, well, there's Amazon, but there's also a bunch of small bookstores. UBC Botanical Garden, they were one of my first supporters. They got that on the shelves. Indigo also has it. I don't know, if you go on a walk, a lot of small bookstores have them, so.
Awesome. Cool. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
All right, we're going to go to break, and when we come back, roving reporter Nina Savage is going to be on the street talking to people about things that fall from the sky. Welcome back to Now You Know BC. We've got roving reporter Nina Savage talking to people on the street about things that fall from the sky.
I'm Nina Savage, and this is Street Survey. We're out and about asking people about things that fall from the sky, like aliens. Let's see what you know on Now You Know BC. What's the craziest thing you've seen fall from the sky?
That's a crazy question.
Fireworks, I guess. Seeing the ashes fall from the sky. Nothing crazy like pigs flying or anything, but...
And I've seen hail balls like the size of baseballs.
The ones that could, like, kill people.
Yeah, I've seen those.
Golf balls, seagull poop, that sort of thing.
It's a myth. It goes into a certain tank, and then when we land, it gets emptied specifically by that crew, the waste management crew. So no, it ain't just falling from the sky. You don't need to worry about that.
Good to know that we won't have poo falling on us. Or have you seen a UFO before?
No.
Yes, I have talked to a lot of pilots, and I'm like, are the stories true? And they have reported to me multiple times that they have seen things that the people on the ground, the dispatchers and stuff, cannot see.
I work a lot up in the north, so it's not unusual to see things in the sky there,
When I was in Miami, I saw like a beam of light go across the sky, and it was like, this is a UFO for sure.
Yeah?
I've seen some strange things in the night sky, but I would be hesitant to call them UFOs.
They believe 100% they're UFOs, aliens, whatever, but like no one else can see them, and they have full live footage. So maybe it is true.
I'm still hoping to see aliens, parachute in one day. We'll see what happens, but...
Do you believe in aliens?
Semi. If I was me, I would say to the alien, hey, run for your life. Like, you don't want to be here, okay? Yeah.
Like 50-50, like...
Yeah, 50-50.
Do you believe that it's good luck to get pooped on by a bird?
Well, I have been pooped on by birds on many occasions, so I like to think it's good luck.
What kind of bird would you be?
Probably a crow or a raven.
Those are wise birds. Aliens, hail, bird poop. Just another reminder to keep your eyes on the sky. Who knows what you'll see? This is Street Survey, and I'm Nina Savage.
We're going on a BC road trip to Ucluelet, BC. Located on the west coast of Vancouver Island in Ucluelet territory, it's a cute and quiet little community with lots to see and do. The last time I stayed here, I stayed at Canadian Princess Lodge, and I was able to walk to most of the local spots to eat and drink, and I've got 3 things you're gonna wanna do when you're in Ucluelet. Number 1 is to go on a hike and see a downed bomber plane that crashed into the forest during World War II. Ucluelet is just down the road from Tofino, and this bomber is located off the highway between the two towns, just a few minute drive. It's in the Pacific Rim National Park, which has tons of other sites, and it's the remnants of a plane that crashed with 12 crew on board in 1945. Everyone survived, and they were able to retrieve all the machine guns and the radar and other equipment out of the plane, except for 4 bombs that they exploded, and now there's just a big crater there that's a pond. The path is fairly well maintained, even though it's sort of an unofficial path. If you want directions, just look up Canso crash site and you'll find your way there. The second thing you gotta check out in Ucluelet is the catch and release aquarium. It's exactly as it sounds. Every spring, a diving crew goes out into the ocean around the aquarium site and harvests live marine life. They keep a spreadsheet of exactly where everything was collected from. And in the fall, they go out and release all the animals again back into the ocean after a veterinarian checks on them and makes sure they're all okay to go back. In the meantime, they operate as any normal aquarium would. You can go in there, touch things, look at things, learn about how they protect the waters in British Columbia. Lastly, certainly not least, number 3, you have to go check out the Gray Whale Deli. Specifically, check out their Yuki cone, which is a brilliant ice cream cone. Why do we not see these everywhere? Yuki is the nickname for Ucluelet, and the owner of this place tells me that when her kids were little, like 20 years ago, they'd help themselves to whatever kind of sweets they wanted in the deli. One of them basically invented this treat. It's a normal ice cream cone with whatever Island Farms ice cream you want as your first scoop on the bottom, and then on the top, they put self-serve. And it is absolutely over the top, the best frozen treat in town. It might be the best frozen treat on all of Vancouver Island. It's simple, but it's brilliant, and you gotta check it out. I will see you in Yuki. With that, we're going to break. I'm gonna come back with more uplifting fun facts. Welcome back to what is oddly the most frightening episode of this show we've ever done. I mean, so far we've only done 3 episodes and the others weren't at all scary. Nothing fell out of the sky in any of them. But these next stories are a little more mellow than those first ones. You might even be inspired by one of them. Did you know that in 1947, the Vancouver Sun newspaper dumped 1,000 cardboard pie plates out of an airplane over Vancouver and Burnaby with lucky numbers on them in a sort of free lottery? It's true. They were supposed to look like flying saucers. And this was at the peak of flying saucer mania when people all over BC, all over the world actually, were reporting seeing UFOs in the sky. And the newspaper was, of course, reporting on all those stories. They dropped the plates on the Thursday afternoon, and people had to check the Sunday edition of the newspaper a few days later to see if the plate that they caught or found in the creek or wherever was a winner. 50 people won $1 each, and one lucky grand prize winner won $50 for catching a flying saucer and bringing it down to the newspaper office. Adjusting for inflation, that's about $1,500 today for the grand prize winner, $15 for the smaller winner, so kind of worth it. I'm not sure how many extra newspapers they sold, but that must have been worth it for them. Speaking of stunts, in the 1940s, a group of female stunt pilots known as the Flying Seven flew over the city of Vancouver and dropped thousands of leaflets, almost like a propaganda drop, but to raise money for a good cause. Inspired by Amelia Earhart and her group of female pilots in the States, called the 99s, the Flying Sevens were a courageous group of female pilots based in Vancouver. They formed in the 1930s. They offered their services to the war effort in the 1940s, first by volunteering to fly in the war, but they were turned away by the Canadian military simply because of their gender. Undeterred, they helped by fundraising and by encouraging other women to take up the profession of flying. They also trained a bunch of pilots in BC. A dude named Harry Pride was one of them. He trained under Roly Moore, who was mostly being described to me as a badass pilot. She was essentially fearless. I once went flying with Harry and he had a similar style. He was in his 90s when we went up in his Cessna, and he recently passed away, so I'm finally able to tell you this story without getting him in trouble. So, Harry himself was a badass, much like his mentor, Rolly Moore. He didn't do any barrel rolls for me up there, but he did push things almost to the very limit. His mission on the day that we met him was to tell me all about the Flying Sevens, his mentor, and what her group collectively achieved for women, for pilots, and really just for the greater good. His other mission was to take me up in the air in his plane and show me, roughly, where they dropped those pamphlets that I mentioned. So, we flew out of the little airport in Langley. He had a co-pilot, of course, Marcia Strang, and we headed towards downtown Vancouver. As we started to get close, a voice came on the radio asking him where he was heading, and he chatted with them for a little bit, some air traffic control person, I don't know who it was. As we got right over the city, the voice got super urgent and said, "We're not authorized to be there, we're in a place we shouldn't be, and that we need to turn around immediately." Harry just kind of casually pretended he didn't hear what they said, turned down the volume, pointed at the place where they dropped the pamphlets. Then we turned around and headed back to the airport in Langley. All of this took place over the span of just a couple minutes tops, and I personally wouldn't have had the gumption to do it, but he really wanted to show us where it all happened. And he had trained under a true badass, Rolly Moore. Rest in peace, Harry. You absolutely would have made the Flying Sevens proud. And now you know. I'm giving away a BC dogwood hat that I designed and that I sell in my merch store at bcbob.ca. As you may know, the dogwood is BC's official flower, and it was made that way in 1956, which is coincidentally the same year that that plane went down on Mount Slessy. The flower actually grows on trees, Pacific dogwood trees, which bloom in April and produce red berries in the fall. It's a snapback hat, so it fits all sizes, and it's embroidered by a local shop called True North, right here in Vancouver. Sign up to my newsletter at bcbob.ca and you'll be entered to win this and all sorts of other weekly prizes. That's the show this week. Big thanks to my guest, Christina Chung, to roving reporter Nina Savage, my co-producer Derek Wong, everybody at employee-owned CHEK TV, and to every gas station owner in BC who still offers free air for our tires. I hope you learned something, and I hope I didn't scare you into never flying again. Some of those stories were kind of freaky, but maybe you want to go on a road trip instead. Explore the region, or you could just watch me do it. Follow me on Instagram, check out my merch at bcbob.ca, and I'll see you next week when I'll bring you more stories about this great province of ours. Now you know BC.
Now you know BC is brought to you by Return It. Don't trash your empty beverage containers, return them for the deposit refund.